She couldn't see his face, but she felt the fear. A thief approached her with bad intentions, but what he did next, no one saw coming. This one act changed both their lives forever. Before diving into the story, comment where you're watching from, and don't forget to subscribe so you won't miss the latest stories. I know you're there. The woman said softly, her voice calm but clear. She stood motionless in her small living room. No alarm, no panic in her voice. Just a quiet confidence that seemed to echo off the walls. Elijah froze mid-step. His fingers were wrapped around the small jewelry box on the wooden shelf, his heart pounding in his chest. He'd picked the lock in under a minute. The place looked empty from the outside. Quiet street, no lights, no barking dogs. That IT was supposed to be an easy job. But now, she was standing just 10 feet away. She couldn't possibly see him. He was sure of it. She hadn't turned on a light. Her gaze didn't follow his movement. And then he noticed the white cane in her hand. She was blind, but somehow she knew. How did she know I was here? Elijah whispered to himself, confused. His boots stayed planted on the carpet as he stared at her. Her brown hair was loosely tied back, and she wore a soft sweater and sweatpants, like someone who had just finished reading a book before bed. Clara, he remembered the name from the mailbox outside. She looked young, maybe late 20s, too young to be living alone with no sight. But what shook him wasn't her blindness. That IT was how calm she was. Most people screamed, called 911, ran for the door, not her. If you need something, take it, she said again, slowly. I don't have much, but you can have what you need. Elijah felt the jewelry box grow heavier in his hands. But, she added, walking slowly to the couch with practiced steps, can I ask you one thing first? She sat down carefully and folded her cane across her lap. She turned her head slightly, as if trying to hear more than just his breath, like she could hear his intentions. Why are you stealing? She asked. Is it for money, or is it for something deeper? Elijah felt his lungs tighten. No one had ever asked him that before. Not like that. He was used to people yelling at him, judges giving him lectures, police officers slamming his head into squad cars. But this quiet woman asking a simple question hit harder than anything he'd heard before. He didn't answer. Couldn't. His throat felt dry, and the jewelry box in his hand now felt like a burning weight. Clara didn't move. She just waited, and the silence between them stretched out like a long, heavy bridge neither of them knew how to cross. Elijah looked around the room. Everything was simple. No big screen TVs. No luxury furniture. A few books with raised dots on the covers. Braille. Probably. A few framed photos. One looked like her and a golden retriever. Nothing worth much. Nothing anyone would want to steal. So why was he here? Because he was desperate. Because he'd been homeless 3 times. Because he owed people money. Because no one had ever shown him another way. But for some reason, none of that felt like an excuse anymore. Not in front of her. Without thinking, he gently placed the jewelry box back where he found it. Then, slowly, silently, he backed away, toward the door. Clara tilted her head again, smiling just a little. You're not a bad person, she said, her voice so soft it almost vanished into the night. You're just lost. Elijah paused. He hadn't heard those words in years. Maybe ever. He opened the front door, the cool night air rushing in. He took one last look back at the woman sitting there in the dark, staring at nothing, and yet somehow, seeing right through him. He left empty-handed in no money. No stolen goods. No backup plan. But with something he hadn't felt in a long time, a storm in his chest. Something was changing. He didn't know what. He didn't know why. But that night, for the first time in years, Elijah didn't feel invisible. He felt seen. And that terrified him more than anything. 2 weeks had passed since Elijah had crept into that quiet house and walked away with nothing in his hands, but something heavy in his heart. He told himself he wouldn't go back. He wasn't that kind of man. The type who made friends, who opened up, who felt things. But he couldn't forget her voice. Soft, calm, honest. The way she sat there in complete darkness, blind, and yet somehow saw right through him. And so, on a cloudy Thursday afternoon, Elijah did something he hadn't done in years. That he knocked on a door. Clara's door, at IT first. There was silence. Then the sound of gentle footsteps. The door creaked open. And there she was, white cane in one hand, the other resting lightly on the doorknob. Her head tilted slightly, listening. Elijah, she said, like she already knew. He froze. How did you know it was me? She smiled. You breathe differently than most people. He blinked, surprised. That's a thing. She chuckled. You'd be amazed what you learn when your ears become your eyes. There was a pause. Elijah shifted on his feet. I just wanted to make sure you were okay. Clara raised an eyebrow, still smiling. You broke into my house and left without stealing anything. That tells me more about you than you think. She stepped back, opening the door wider. Come in. He hesitated. He was used to people locking their doors because of him, not inviting him in after. But he stepped in. The living room was the same, simple, peaceful. A light scent of lavender in the air. There was soft music playing from a speaker in the corner. Instrumental piano. Clara sat down on the couch, then tapped the cushion next to her. You can sit. I promise the only trap here is awkward conversation, she teased. Elijah managed a weak laugh and sat down. For a few moments, neither of them spoke. Then Clara broke the silence. I didn't call the police, she said. You probably expected me to, huh? Elijah nodded slowly. Yeah, honestly, I did. But I didn't, she said calmly. Because something told me you weren't really here to steal. Elijah stared at the floor. I was, he muttered. I thought I was. But then you talked to me. And I realized, he stopped. Realized what? She asked gently. That I've been running for so long. I forgot what it felt like to be seen, he said. My mom died when I was 10. After that, it was foster homes, group homes, the streets. I got in trouble. Fights. Petty theft. I got real good at pushing people away before they could leave. He swallowed hard. People gave up on me. So I gave up too. Clara sat quietly, her hands folded in her lap. After a moment, she spoke. You know what's funny? She said softly. I lost my sight when I was 21. Car accident. Drunk driver hit us head on. My best friend was driving. She survived. I did too, but not my eyes. Elijah turned toward her slowly. But the hardest part, Clara continued, wasn't the blindness. It was losing people. My so-called friends stopped calling. Family didn't know how to handle me. I became invisible overnight. She smiled sadly. So I get it. That feeling of being thrown away. Elijah didn't know what to say. His chest tightened. He hadn't expected this. He thought he might hear a lecture or get kicked out. Instead, he was hearing his own. Pain echoed in someone else's voice. I'm sorry, he finally whispered. Clara tilted her head toward him. You don't have to be. Pain connects people, if we let it. They sat together in that quiet room, two broken souls from different worlds, connected by wounds they never asked for. Elijah looked over at her again. This woman who couldn't see his face, but could somehow see his heart. I don't know what I'm doing, he said. I'm just tired of being who I was. Clara smiled, turning toward him. Then maybe, she said, it's time to become someone new. For the first time in years, Elijah didn't feel like a criminal, or a burden, or a mistake. He just felt human. And for a man who had spent years hiding in shadows, that simple feeling was the first step toward the light. Days turned into weeks, and somehow, Elijah kept finding his way back to Clara's door. At first, it felt strange, knocking on the same door he once entered as a thief. But now, he came not for what he could take, but for something he didn't even know he needed. Connection. Every visit, they talked about little things, big things, life things. Clara told him about her favorite books growing up, how she'd once dreamed of becoming a writer, how she still kept journals written in Braille. Elijah told her about the nights he slept on benches, the foster home where he learned to fight, and how nobody ever taught him how to stop. One day, Clara showed him how she used her phone. With one finger, she glided over the screen as a robotic voice read out each app, messages, calendar, music. How do you do that? Elijah asked, genuinely curious. She grinned. I listen. I trust my memory. And I don't give up. Later, she invited him to her kitchen that he watched in awe as she chopped vegetables by touch, boiled water by feel, and moved around the space like a dancer in her own world. You're amazing, Elijah muttered, shaking his head. You're the first person to say that without pity in their voice, Clara replied, smiling. And then, one afternoon, she showed him her paintings. Yes, paintings. Canvas after canvas filled with swirls, shapes, and colors. She used textured paint, so she could feel her work as much as imagine it. How do you know what color you're using? Elijah asked, brushing a finger over a raised golden sun. I organized the tubes by texture, braille labels, and then I just trust the feeling. Elijah blinked at the painting. You're braver than anyone I've ever met. Clara laughed gently. Bravery is just fear with a little bit of hope. That line stuck with him. Bravery isn't the absence of fear, it's choosing to keep going with it. Slowly, Elijah started helping out around the house. Groceries, trash, cleaning gutters, fixing a wobbly chair, repairing a leaky sink. And as he did, something in him shifted. Clara never asked for help, but she accepted it with gratitude and grace. She treated him not like a broken man trying to make up for his past, but like a human being with value. Just as he was one night, after washing dishes together, Clara sat down and said, "You know, you don't have to be the person your past says you are." Elijah froze. Those words cut through him like lightning. You don't have to be the person your past says you are. He didn't say anything, just nodded. Then he went home, and for the first time in a long time, he looked at his life. Really looked at the dusty duffel bag in his closet filled with stolen watches, the cracked phone buzzing with messages from old friends, guys who only knew how to take, fight, and disappeared, the empty walls of his apartment, at the emptiness inside him. And just like that, he knew that he grabbed the bag of stolen goods, carried it to the dumpster out back, and tossed it in without looking back. He deleted every number in his phone that belonged to the life he no longer wanted. He sat in silence for hours, not knowing what came next, but knowing one thing for sure, that life was over. He wasn't sure what he was becoming, but for the first time, he was willing to find out. And it all started with a blind woman who didn't need eyes to see the good in him, from thief to friend. But change never comes easy. For weeks, Elijah had been walking the tightrope between two lives, the one he was trying to leave behind and the one he was slowly stepping into. And just when things started to feel peaceful, life reminded him, the past doesn't let go without a fight. That it happened on an ordinary afternoon. Elijah was walking Clara home from the grocery store. He carried the bags in one hand and guided her gently with the other, their steps in sync like they'd done it 100 times. They were laughing about something, a story she told him about burning toast 3 days in a row. Then, suddenly, "Yo, Eli." The voice cut through the air like a knife. Two guys were leaning against a parked car on the corner. Tattoos, hoodies, that familiar swagger of men who had nothing to lose and didn't care who they hurt. Elijah froze. That it was Darnell and Goose, guys from his old crew. Guys who had helped him rob gas stations, pawn off stolen phones, and jump fences when sirens screamed behind them. "What's this?" Darnell smirked, stepping forward. "Babysitting now." Goose laughed. "Got yourself a charity case, huh?" Elijah's jaw tightened. His first instinct was rage, defend, fight, survive. But before he could move, Clara gently tugged on his sleeve. "Let's go," she whispered. Calm, grounding, he stepped in front of her protectively and started to walk, ignoring their laughter behind him. "You got a new life now, Eli," Goose called out. "What? Playing boyfriend to a blind chick? You think people like you get second chances?" Elijah didn't respond. He kept walking, but every step felt heavier. That night, long after Clara had gone to bed, Elijah sat on the front steps of her apartment building, his hoodie pulled low, eyes wet with tears. He hadn't cried in years. The weight of it all collapsed on his shoulders. "I can't do this," he muttered into the darkness. "They'll never let me go. I'll always be that guy. I'll never be clean. They'll drag me back." His voice cracked with pain. He didn't hear Clara come out. She sat beside him silently, folding her hands in her lap, her blind eyes faced the sky, toward stars she could no longer see. But her presence felt like light. "You know," she said softly, "I used to believe I'd never live a normal life again. After the accident, I thought blindness meant I'd lost everything. My future, my freedom, my worth." Elijah turned toward her, breathing shaky. "But one day," she continued, "someone told me, you can't fight darkness by becoming part of it, but you can light your own candle. And if you do, someone else might light theirs too." Her words were quiet, but they hit Elijah like thunder. He sat there, trembling, not because he was weak, but because he was finally beginning to understand just how strong he could become. He looked down at his hands, the same hands that had stolen hurt, pushed people away. But now, those same hands had helped Clara cross streets, paint walls, carry groceries. Maybe they could do more. The next morning, Elijah woke with new fire in his chest. He walked into a local community center and signed up for a job training program. Construction, hard work, honest work. The woman behind the desk blinked in surprise when he filled out the form. First time? She asked. First real time. He replied he also started therapy. At first, he hated it. Hated digging up memories he'd buried. But little by little, the sessions became his oxygen. A place where he could speak without shame and be heard without judgment. He started journaling at night, the same way Clara did. And slowly, something inside him began to change. The rage softened, the shame eased, the fear quieted. He wasn't perfect. The past still haunted him. But now, he wasn't running anymore. He was facing it one choice at a time. And every night, when he left the job center or walked back from therapy, he'd pass by Clara's apartment. She'd be sitting on her porch, a cup of tea in hand, and she'd always say the same thing, another candle lit. And Elijah would smile, because he knew what she meant. His flame was small, but it was growing, and one day, it might help someone else find their way out of the dark. 2.1 year later, the world looked very different. The city gym was packed with people, families, local leaders, volunteers, and workers from every corner of the neighborhood. A banner stretched across the stage. Hope rises, honoring community transformation. Among the crowd, Clara stood quietly near the front. Her white cane gently tapped the floor as she found her place, guided by a volunteer. Though she couldn't see the stage, she could feel the energy in the room and the steady beating of her heart. Then she heard it. Next up, the host said with pride, "We honor a man whose story reminds us that no one is too far gone and no heart is too broken to be rebuilt." Clara's breath caught. "Elijah Carter," the host announced. From thief to mentor. The crowd erupted in applause. Elijah stepped onto the stage in a clean button-up shirt and pressed jeans. He looked different now, stronger, calmer. But the biggest change wasn't in his clothes or posture. It was in his eyes. They held peace now. He stood at the microphone, cleared his throat, and took a breath. "I used to take from others because I thought the world took everything from me first," he began. "I grew up believing that pain was permanent and that love was a lie." The room was silent. Every word hung in the air like a heartbeat. "But then, I met someone," Elijah continued. "Someone who couldn't see my face, but somehow saw me." He looked down at the front row where Clara stood, her head tilted toward the sound of his voice. "She taught me that being seen isn't about eyes, it's about heart. And that redemption isn't something you earn by being perfect, it's something you start by choosing to try." Elijah paused, eyes shimmering. "Clara, this is for you." A wave of emotion swept through the crowd as he held up the plaque, engraved with his name and the words "Community Mentor of the Year." Tears streamed down Clara's face. She didn't need to see the stage to know what he looked like in that moment. She felt it. After the ceremony, Elijah found her near the exit. Music played softly in the background. People were laughing, hugging, celebrating. But for them, time seemed to stand still. He reached for her hand. She held it tightly. "I always believed in the man you could become," she whispered, voice trembling with emotion. Elijah smiled, his eyes brimming with tears of his own. "And I finally believe in him too," he said. They stood there, hand in hand. Two people who had once felt invisible, now seen by the world, and more importantly, by each other. In the following months, Elijah began mentoring troubled youth. Kids who reminded him of his younger self. Kids who needed more than rules and lectures. They needed someone who understood what it meant to fall and how to rise again. He helped them find jobs, gave them purpose, taught them how to build instead of break. And every time he told his story, he spoke of the woman who changed everything, not with force, not with judgment, but with compassion. Clara continued her artwork, her canvases now displayed in small galleries and community spaces. One of her paintings, a swirling golden sun surrounded by dark clouds, hung right above Elijah's desk at the mentoring center. Its title, Light Within. Elijah would often stare at it in quiet moments, reminding himself of where he came from and who helped him find his way out of the dark. His story became more than his past. It became his purpose. From a broken boy who walked into a house ready to steal, to a man who now walked into lives ready to give. All because one blind woman, who had lost her sight, never lost her vision. She saw the good in him when he couldn't see it in himself. She gave him hope when he thought he was beyond saving. She gave him a chance when the world gave him chains. And through her quiet courage, she taught him the greatest truth of all. Sometimes, the people who see the least are the ones who see the most. Red Heart. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Sparkling Heart. Every week, we bring you true and inspiring stories that remind us all of the power of second chances, love, and humanity. Sparkles, thank you for being part of this journey. Until next time, stay kind, stay hopeful, and always believe in the good inside people.